Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community, especially Chrissy Gardner, who was a longtime East Mountain resident. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Rogan?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Mr. Gahn?
Here.
Mr. Wexler?
Here. There will be a motion to move item 5B to 7th order for a final vote based on the attached emergency certificate. There will be a second opportunity to speak in 7th order prior to the final passage of this piece of legislation. Dispense with reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A Tax Assessor's Report for hearing date to be held August 2, 2017.
Are there any comments? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have announcements at this time?
I have two announcements. The first one, this is a press release that was sent out from OECD, and I'm going to summarize it. But in Scranton's 2016 action plan, there was $50,000 earmarked for a new program, which is a housing program for rental rehabilitation. Scranton's rental rehabilitation program is designed to increase the supply of long-term availability of affordable standard rental for low-income families, as well as to revitalize and strengthen Scranton's neighborhoods by addressing substandard rental housing conditions within the community. The program will provide half the cost necessary to correct code violations. The maximum deferred payment loan is $10,000 per unit. An additional $2,500 per unit will be provided for lead-based paint abatement that does not require a match. The deferred payment loan is interest-free forgivable loan that has no monthly payment as long as all program requirements are met. In order to protect the city, a mortgage will be placed upon the property for the length of the affordability period. The affordability period is between 10 to 20 years, depending on the dollar amount of the subsidy received. Anyone who's interested in this program can contact Scranton's OECD office at 570-348-4216. And the second one, this was given to us by Mr. Bolus, and I see he is here tonight, but I do want to mention it as well. Two Iwo Jima flag presentations will be held on Saturday, August 5th at the Marine Corps Detachment on Alder Street on East Mountain. The ceremony is at 2 p.m. and a dinner will follow for a $10 donation. I'm sure Mr. Bolus will be talking about it more when he speaks tonight. Thank you.
I have a couple announcements. First, this Saturday, July 29th from noon until 8 p.m., the 5th annual Scranton Made Arts on the Square Festival will be held in downtown in the courthouse. The festival features local artists, craft vendors, music, and food. Also being held this weekend in downtown, July 28th to the 30th, is the Lackawanna County 3-on-3 basketball tournament in the 100 block and 200 blocks of Wyoming Avenue. Please be aware of possible road closures due to these events. Also, it's a little ways off, but on Saturday, September 23rd at 11 a.m. in honor of Councilman Bob McGough, there will be a gazebo dedication taking place at Connors Park. And that's all I have.
Yes, on Tuesday, August 1st is National Night Out. It will be held at Scranton High School, and it will begin at 6 p.m.
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
Sherry Scranstad.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Sherry Scramstead. I live at the Morgan Manor in Scranton. Some of you may remember me as I've come before you several times with no resolution as yet to the concerns I've brought before you. Most citizens who appear here to address you are concerned about financial matters. I'm not saying that those concerns are unimportant, but I come before you to detail the elder abuse that continues to go on in this city with your sanction. I'm talking about exploitation, control, and financial rape of the elderly. In 2012, when Clover Management testified in public hearings before this body, they fraudulently told the council that they sought a building and operating permit and a 10-year tax abatement for a senior apartment complex that would offer, quote, affordable housing, unquote, to those 55 and over of between $700 to $800 a month. This body granted them all their requests. From the time the doors opened to the Greenridge Senior Apartment Complex on September 1st, 2014, the one-bedroom apartment went for $865 and the two-bedroom for $985. At the expiration of each year's lease since then, each rent was raised $50 a year, and those who were never informed before they moved in were charged an extra $15 for the convenience of living on the first floor. Just this month, a new manager at the complex told residents there would be a 3% raise in rents every year, when almost all original residents had been told that there would not be an automatic increase at the expiration of an annual lease, and when there was an increase, it would be only the cost of living adjustment. Additionally, this management corporation has sought to control the very lives of the residents that live there. They cannot hang communally produced jigsaw puzzles shellacked and framed in the hallways. They cannot feed the birds, nor can they hang wind chimes, nor hang wreaths on their inside doors. They had to surrender monies that the residents themselves had raised for community events and outings, from a weekly bingo game, which each attendee paid $5 for and ran the game completely on their own. The community room kitchen, which was stacked by donations from residents and used by them in the mornings for coffee and conversations, was recently locked by the management. But the two worst offenses were ordering elderly and handicapped residents, some in wheelchairs, others with walkers, some with cerebral palsy and asthma, others with diabetes, heart conditions, and on dialysis, to shovel out their own cars in the more than 2-foot snowfall we had this winter, all while still receiving a 10-year tax abatement from this body. You may remember Representative Haggerty's interview on WNEP regarding this matter. The other egregious behavior by Clover Management was to call 3 Scranton police officers to escort a former elderly resident off the property while she was visiting her best friend, or face being arrested for trespassing, because this former resident had the audacity to contact elected officials when management demonstrated they had no intention of keeping their word to the city and the residents, and so she was refused a renewal of her lease. After checking with an attorney who was currently running for district attorney, this former resident was told that unless the lease specifically stated that management must approve all visitors to residents' apartments, there is no basis for arrest for trespassing to any visitor of a bona fide resident. When all of this was revealed to the Better Business Bureau in Scranton, their opinion was that this was not just a case of fraud, but of abuse of the elderly. They revealed that this management corporation already had 7 complaints against them, and now there are 8. Despite all of this, when I appeared before this council to relate all of this in the past, I was ignored. Not even a word was spoken to me, nor even a nod of a head by any council member during the meeting. Let me warn those of you who are so arrogant as to treat those who elected you as though they are invisible and don't exist, or that their concerns are so insignificant that they don't even deserve comment, that you will not last here and you will not go further in public service. Which brings me to this council's solicitor. After meeting a member of this council in another setting and discussing the plight of the elderly at the apartment complex, the residents of whom are being financially raped by this fraudulent corporation, the member asked Solicitor Minora to review the public testimony by Clover Management and what they had promised the city. The council member emailed me that Mr. Minora would email me directly after his review. Mr. Minora did not review the public testimony by Clover, but instead he sent me a copy of the Lyrdle law under which the council granted the tax abatements and permits. Either Mr. Minora is too dense to do what was asked of him, or he purposely refused to do so. For what reason, I can only speculate. After being reminded by me to review the public testimony by Clover...
Excuse me, we do have a time limit here, and I...
Yes, I understand,
Yes.
sir, but I have been before you
Yes,
3
but
times, and you have ignored me.
We have discussed this
Well,
several different
if you-
times. It's not an issue that we can...
Sir, I suggest you do what Clover Management did and call the Scranton Police to have me removed. Otherwise, I'm going to finish my statement.
You cannot.
I'm sorry, you do what you need to do, and I'll do what I need to do.
We're going to take a recess.
After being reminded...
Call the meeting back to order. Just as a comment, City Council does have rules. There is a time limit for speakers. We allowed some extra time. The speaker continued to carry on in disrespect to the council and of our rules. I had no other option but to ask for the police to come. Hate doing it. It's an insult to the citizenship here. It's an insult to this council. During every meeting that we have, citizens are allowed to speak. They're allowed to insult us. They're allowed to make comments. We listen to all of it. But each one of them respects the rules of council, and each one of them leaves as their time limit is complete. That's all we ask the speakers. We don't put any restrictions on what they say. We just ask them to follow the rules. So in this case, we had to call a recess, and I did have to ask for police officers to come. I have no alternative. So the meeting is resumed. Next speaker is Rosie Davin.
Hello, gentlemen and ladies. I have a couple questions tonight. One of them has been answered by Mr. Gahan already, and I appreciate that. The second one is, have we heard anything yet about the question that I had raised a number of weeks ago when Rockwell Avenue Playground was open, about the fact that we need to make sure that the kids are safe? Have we heard anything on what the investigation proceeded?
We have not received anything, correct, Mrs. Reed? No, not at this time. We haven't
Okay,
received anything from DPW.
is there any way that we can bring that back to their attention so
Sure,
that
we can send a second request.
Yeah, and I'll ask Chief Graziano for a follow-up.
Thank you very much.
On what the study produced. And I think I do remember that we're talking about signage and just
Yes.
with that bridge opening up in the park right there.
And
just-
we were hoping for a lowering of the speed limit around all playgrounds in the area so that all the kids and adults that go with them are safe.
Right. Yes, I'll definitely follow up on that for you.
Thank you. This is going to be one that there's a couple questions that will go into this. And they're going to think that I'm really against the DPW, but I'm not. I worry about the monies that are spent by not having an accurate and a effective manner for picking up garbage and recycling. Is there someone who goes out and checks on these guys every once in a while to see that they're following a specific route? also, how is that route decided on? Is there a computer program that's used to make that route up, or is it a person that goes ahead and says, well, this is the best way to go? Is it the most effective?
I could answer that for you, because this is something
Thank
that
you.
drives me nuts as well, because there's routes in the city where literally one crew does half a street, another crew does another half, and they haven't been done by a computer. I've been calling for an efficiency study of the DPW for as long as I've been on city council.
Okay.
To track the routes, to make sure they're being done more efficient. We have much better technology now than we did when these routes were set up.
I was just going to say, when were they set up?
An exact date, I couldn't even tell you. But
Okay.
it seems they do modify. If there's a truck down, they'll modify, the routes a little bit. But I've been calling for an efficiency study. Now, we do have a study out to determine the true cost of garbage collection in the city, which is a big component, but we need to get those routes hammered down so it's saving man hours, so it's saving gas, and so it's more efficient for
Yes.
the residents.
Now, also, are they allowed overtime?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so who approves that overtime, and for what reasons?
Well, it would be the director of the department. Now, sometimes there's overtime when there's a holiday. For instance, if Monday is a holiday and they work on a Saturday, the Saturday is overtime pay.
Okay.
But as needed, we get a big storm, there's trees down, guys will get called in for overtime.
Which
whereas
is understandable.
Needed. Right.
And there's also a supervisor out during the day.
That's what I-
Besides
that's-
the director, there is a supervisor out during the day.
So how often do the supervisors travel with the guys themselves? Or do they go out in their own cars and check to make sure that things are being done
They kind of
correctly?
are assigned other duties sometimes as well, so it's just like a supervisor in any place. I'm sure they tag along as the day goes on.
The reason I'm asking these questions is because in our North Scranton area, Bill will probably be able to testify to this as well. They go down Rockwell Avenue and they don't pick anything up. And then they come back up and they go down Gilbert to the bottom end of Gilbert, and they pick up Gilbert down the lower part, and then they go up, make a right-hand turn, and then back down on the upper end of Gilbert, and half the time they don't pick anything up. I sat there and watched them the other day. I was off, and I sat there and watched them. I thought, why are they doing it like this? It just didn't make sense to me. So any information you could get, if I could get a copy of the route even, that would be fantastic. So I could at least look at it and see if they're even following the route that they're supposed to follow. That would be fantastic. I thank you guys.
Joan Hodowanitz?
Joan Hodowanitz, city resident and taxpayer. With regard to item 5B, the emergency certificate attached for the contract with Mark Paul, I understand from the caucus this evening the rationale for this emergency certificate in that you have 6 of 7 firehouses that need immediate maintenance attention, particularly the roofs, and there's the weather issue of getting the roofs done before the bad weather sets in. That's not my concern. My concern is, I listened to Mr. Bolzoni point out that the horrible state of maintenance of these firehouses and how they've been neglected for years and years, and I would recommend, I'm surprised that we're not doing this. If we are, I'm not aware of it. We should have a 5, a 10, and a 15-year capital budget plan that looks into ongoing maintenance issues such as this. And I'm not talking about the change the washer and the sinks type deal. I'm talking about roofs are only good for so many years. And if we neglect our infrastructure, not just the firehouses, but this building and the Sorrenti Center and all the other buildings that we have in the city, all we're doing is buying into a larger bill down the road. Because you don't maintain these buildings, you're going to pay through the nose when you eventually get around to fixing them. And keep in mind also that there's a direct relationship between the caliber of services that our public service workers provide to us and the infrastructure which we give to them to provide those services. So I'm just suggesting that since I'm persona non grata on the first and fourth floors, perhaps you can work with the administration so that as we go into the next budget process, that we look very hard at our long-term capital budget to make sure that we don't allow our infrastructure to degrade to this extent again in the future. The 2016 audit, still not on the website as of 4:30. Don't forget, you have to put your summary in the newspaper, and I'm still waiting on an answer. Are we going to continue to retain Rainey and Rainey for audit preparation?
I would expect that to be true.
Okay. With regard to your request to the Attorney General, any feedback on that yet?
No, we have not heard back.
Okay, how about the Knowles insurance list? Okie dokie. How about the third-party administrator RFP?
Same as last week.
Okie dokie. With regard to rental registration, I gave you some information from my building, Forum Towers, but I don't see any way to contact Mr. Moran yet. Maybe I've just missed it, but I recommend that he contact all the local colleges, University of Scranton, Marywood, Medical College. They do maintain a list of rental properties for their students, and that probably would be a good place to start. I think the University of Scranton has half the hill section by now. And mirabile dictu, there is a sign in front of the Linden Street parking garage. The elevator works. So, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. And you enjoy your recess next month.
Thank you.
Bob Bolus?
Evening, Council. Bob Bola, Scranton. Just briefly, Mr. Rogan brought up about what's going on August 5th. This was the presentation that we submitted. It's in honor of Sergeant William Gnost. He's the Marine Sergeant who filmed the flag raising over Mount Suribachi. And shortly thereafter, he was killed going into a cave. Sergeant Gnost is still in a cave. I've been there 3 times on Iwo Jima. I hope my 4th mission there is to bring his body and that of 2 Marines home. And we've been given permission by the Emperor of Japan, the Prime Minister, and now we have the cooperation of our President and Vice President. Couldn't ask for anything better to bring our people home. And it's basically called A Hero Remembered. This article here was done by the Japanese, which I was a participant in, and they came from Japan to meet with the family, and I was invited to participate, and I feel very proud to be a participant in it. And I bought the 70th anniversary flag that was on Iwo Jima. We were there when the flag was raised during the reunion tour. It went up for auction. I purchased it, and it's being donated by me to the Marine Corps League and all members of the service on August 5th. So there'll be a ceremony. Everybody in the public, anybody that wants to be there can be there. And there'll be a dinner after that. It's a $10 donation. And the dinner is being sponsored by Teresa's Angels. Getting into some of the other stuff here, and we saw it here, but I'd like to see the police officer go back out on the street, because I'm going to give you just a little insight of what happens. Only the police chief or the mayor can order someone from the podium. Council does not have that power or authority. That's been tried and tested. And I think we should just send the police officer back out on the street to take care of the citizens of the city. I don't think that's an issue we need to do here, but unfortunately, he could be here, but council, you cannot have him do anything else to any citizen here unless the mayor or the chief of police do it. And you can check with your solicitor. Okay, and that's fact. It's not fiction. I know I was part of it when it happened a long time ago. The public evaluates the performance of its elected officials to a great extent by what happens at meetings. Many citizens form their total opinions of city government on the basis of having attended just one council meeting. This is the time to impress citizens favorably and show them that the council is capable of doing its job. The citizen participation period is a time slot typically set aside on the agenda for citizens to address council on any subject. It is not to be confused with a public hearing, which is formal proceedings conducted by the purpose of discussing a specific topic. Most city councils do have a portion of the meeting set aside for citizen discussion and comment. The purpose of the council meeting is to conduct the city business. Council members are expected to be polite to citizens appearing before them. The governing body should listen actively to its critics. Listen to learn and understand, not to argue, dispute, or to silence their critics. It's helpful to state that you understand how the person or group feels. Keep in mind that anger is directed at your role, not at you as an individual. Last but not least, while remaining respectful, keep a sense of humor, because after the meeting's over, everything else is over. I'm going to go on a couple issues here, Mr. Gahan, and all due respect. I was at the meeting with the mayor. You were there, you came to the podium, you had your 5 minutes. You sat down, I came up to speak, you jumped up in front of me and tried to demand more speaking time. You tried to bully the mayor. I read in the paper your comments, you won't be bullied, you won't be doing this. You gotta understand something. Attorney Abrahamson was hired by the sewer authority, not the mayor. But everybody here participated in that hiring when you signed the recovery plan. And while you sit back now and let this go on knowing full well that an illegal activity may have taken place with the sewer authority that has not been disbanded and cannot disperse money, you have remained silent. At that meeting with the mayor, there were 5 of you. You came up and spoke. But if you use some common sense between all of us, you would have each taken 5 minutes. That meant you had 25 minutes to discuss the issues with the mayor. And you ignored that. Yet we come here and talk. You have legislative powers. One of the things you should have done or could have done was filed a subpoena. And they'd have written, Abrahamson would have had to sit right here and answer your questions under oath. You didn't take that advantage. And what I'm trying to do is enlighten you. You didn't, Mr. Abrahamson didn't bully you. You bullied him, and now he's taking the offensive. When you had another alternative that had the power, not of a lawsuit, it had the power of discussion. And that's what you gained from maturity and using some common sense in here. And that hasn't been exposed or expressed here. So my suggestion to you, get off the bullying, the grandstanding, because it's not getting you anywhere. In fact, it's making you really look ridiculous, and that's not what you should be as a councilman.
Thank you, Mr.
Use
Bowles.
the power of the subpoena and do the job. And one more important thing in here, discussions do happen. That's the purpose of councils through the centuries have been created, is to have a dialogue and a debate between citizens and officials. And that's something we don't do here. And if we did more of that, maybe we would have gotten along further and there wouldn't be the hostilities here that people are being argued. Like last week when you told me, don't have a discussion, you don't do this and do that. Questions and answers are what's important. Keep that in mind, Mr. Wexler. In your next position, you may not get.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
But that's what I tried telling you, and all due respect, respect the people.
Thank you, Mr.
Come
Bowles.
here, and please don't thank me. I said in the past, I don't come here to be thanked. I come here to be respected as a citizen and taxpayer, and you just don't respect when people talk to you.
Thank you.
So please, change the thank you to respect, and you'll go a lot further. Ignorance is bliss. Please end it.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Lee Morgan?
Well, good evening, Council. Another stellar meeting. I think that if you really would have paid attention to what that lady was saying instead of ending the meeting, you might have learned something. And you probably could have did something for not only her, but for the residents of the city. And give them some idea you're working for them instead of what they really think. And I think that the people at home would have really benefited from seeing the kind of politics that takes place in this city over, you know, people's lives and the way the city's degraded its citizens over an extended period of time. And Mr. Ogan, I don't know why you were so troubled to hear what that woman had to say. I mean, I just don't understand it at all, and you're running for retention. But I think that 7A should be tabled, okay? Because if we're talking about exit plan for Act 47, it's almost comical. Because I don't know how you're going to put the money back from the sewer deal, and I don't know how you're going to give all the refuge fees or all this other money, because you're in court in a couple different directions. And you know, I see where Judge Moyles has stepped out of this case with the Scranton Sewer Authority. And Judge Menor has stepped in. And I think Judge Moyles should have stayed in. And in my own opinion, I think Judge Menor needs to step out because he has Mr. Menor here, and there's a Menor on the school board. There's just too much. There's just too much there. I think this case needs to be moved outside of Lackawanna County, where it can get a real, fair hearing based on the merits of the case and based on law. And I'm not so sure it's going to happen here. I think it's also pretty important to realize that there seems to be a buzz in the community over House Bill 76. It's just a terrible bill. It isn't even worthy of consideration. Now, from what I understand, there's a meeting on Wednesday at 6 p.m. at Lackawanna College. But that bill is just completely useless. Has no merit at all, because all property tax has to end. And there's just, with over 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, there's just a mountain of debt sitting there. It's just not going to answer any of the real problems that confront all the voters and all the residents across the Commonwealth. Because the real problem is all the pension money that all these school districts owe. The police officers here, I mean, when you sold the sewer authority, you just threw them right out of the boat. I don't know what they're going to do with their retirement, because I'm not sure they're going to collect most of it. I mean, you know, it's time for reality to set in. And it's nice that all the politicians dress pretty, because you guys do have nice suits on. I got to give you that. I mean, you couldn't answer one question that was put to you today and just shook your head no. But as far as dressing, you got it down. I just think, though, it's really time to consider what's taken place here. The country's reached a point where it's in debt so far with so many pension plans just spewing across the Commonwealth, not just this Commonwealth, but across the nation, because you can dress any politician in a cheap suit and they can pass a lot of legislation to the detriment of the people that they're supposed to be helping. And I'd like to say that, you know, Mr. Wessler, you proved that tonight by ending the meeting when somebody had a problem. I mean, it just goes to prove that, you know what, you as president have the right to extend the amount of time you can give to a speaker. And for this whole council, not one person objected and wanted to hear what that woman had to say. It's troubling. And you're going to represent who? That's the real troubling thing, yourself and people we can't see. The Scranton Times is asking a lot of troubling questions. And Mr. Gahan, I wouldn't worry about being sued, because you have a certain amount of immunity. And I'm not even sure what you're being sued for. But you know, the troubling thing is that if you work for us and all the layer of bureaucrats across the Commonwealth work for us, we're in big trouble. They just passed a budget $2 billion short. Does anybody anywhere in this Commonwealth think that we have the government we deserve? That's a great question to ask people. And you know what? It doesn't matter whether one person elected you and everybody else stayed home. You had an obligation to move in the best interest of the people who reside in this state, and it's just not happening. Good luck.
Bev DeBarros.
Bev DeBarros, Quincy Avenue in Scranton. This is just for your information about our county prison, which is right on North Washington, same as this, you know, up the line there. And about we're getting books in there and getting a library. And I bring this tonight for information because even though it's a county jail, it's in our city. And these are our neighbors. It came to my attention that there is no library in our county prison up here. And that was pretty astounding to me, because I think almost all of the prisons in Pennsylvania have a library system inside. So I went to the prison board meeting, and Judge Girollo and the board said, I said, how about if we get donated books and put in the prison? And he said, yeah, that would be good. So that's what we've been doing, and thanks to the Times, Kyle Wynn wrote an article about that very thing, and oh my goodness, the donations just poured in from churches, the Century Club, individuals, you name it. We have hundreds of really good books. They have to be paperback books to go in. So we're gathering all these books, and now we're working on a system to distribute them in there. And the prison bought some book carts, and so we'll load them up with these books, and volunteers will take them around. So I just think that's a good thing. And I think that's it on that. But while I'm here, for the winter, for the snow removal or snow on the streets, the city streets, I wish there was another way other than that grit that is put down, which solves the problem immediately. I mean, you know, it makes it easy, you know, safe to drive on. But then the aftermath is, for months, you're sweeping up this grit off the street. And if you don't sweep it up, it gets washed down into the sewer system, which is not good. So I just wish there was another alternative, another product that could be effective but not have this side effect. So I don't know what that would be, but I'm sure you could.
I actually spoke to PennDOT regarding that, because PennDOT doesn't have the same issue, and the problem is PennDOT uses 100% salt on their roads. The city uses a salt aggregate mix, and that's why you have those pebbles, that grit, which gives cars traction. This was years ago. I spoke to a former DPW director why we do things differently than PennDOT, and the answer I was given was cost, because the aggregate is much less expensive than the salt. But I think in the long run, it probably would be safer for snow removal, and in the long run, it would be cheaper, but not having to deal with all that mess if we explored going to the mixture that PennDOT uses with the 100% salt.
Thank you. Because even though we do have street sweepers, machines, we all know that they don't make it around. And even if they did, that's just tons of stuff that has to be taken up, and then we get charged, I guess, to dump it, as far as I know. So thanks for looking into that. Okay.
Thank you. Glennis Johns?
Hello, everyone. I just want to start off saying that this is my first city council meeting.
You picked a good one.
I sure did. And I think it's incredibly interesting just to see the dynamics of this room and the lack of compassion that I see between the council members and the community citizens. The fact that there's only 13 people here shows that not that many people want to get involved. So for me, as a young millennial, to come here and see this sort of friction between the city council and our residents, it's disheartening. And I did have some other questions about the city, but I think I'm going to skip over them for right now. My main reason for coming here today is because I'm doing a lot of research on the city of Scranton, particularly the history when it comes to African Americans here in this town. And I feel like we have a lack of representation, and right now my motive and my drive is to promote that, and the amount of facts and representation that we've had in this city from like 1880 to the present day, and all of the men and women that actually sat in this council, sat in this very room in the 1800s, and how like we're not really represented. So I want to do a lot more working with the city, working with the school districts, and letting students of color know that you can be an educated person, school's valuable, and that we deserve representation in the city. As you can see, there's only 3 African American people in this entire room, and we are the minority here, and like I said, I feel like we get the representation of being negative here, and when there's a lot of positivity and a lot of excellence that is here, that is just underrepresented. So anyway, I would like to talk about you guys have been, I looked at your agenda for today, and you guys are working on something with the downtown plan. I didn't really find what that plan was exactly, but I do see that you guys have plans to make that city a bit better, but I don't really see how renovating these apartments that are above the cost of living here is going to make the city better, and what you're really doing to revitalize downtown, because I know you guys are bringing these businesses, but businesses don't actually equal community, and where you're looking for community to me doesn't really seem to be something that is working. You also said that you're looking for someone that can be staff or representative of that. I have a master's degree, I have a little bit of background on businesses, and I know people who would be interested in opening up businesses and things like that. So if I knew the business plan, I would love to participate in that way. I would have recommendations of doing more community activities specifically located downtown. I know there's something happening on Saturday, so I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I mean as in making this a community down there, I don't think it actually is happening. I think that there's people that are living down there, but I don't really think it's a community. So I would like to know more about the downtown plan, because I work downtown, I spend a lot of my time down there. So like I said, this plan doesn't actually equal the things that I've seen, and even though that there's been small progress since 2015, I don't think the amount of time and money you guys are spending into it is actually like showing up yet. I think those are like the few things that I wanted to say. And I just noticed too, this is to go back on my discussion between council and the city, it seems like there's a lack of discussion or debate, like one of the gentlemen said that's no longer in the room, and I was wondering where that aspect actually comes into play and how that actually works out. And if you guys have any suggestions for the quote-unquote millennials, the community of my age group, what would you like to see from us and what we can do, because I'm really interested in making this community better, not only for me, but also students, kids, because I feel like the things that we are doing here, I don't think we value education. I think the high schools are terrible. I think the middle schools aren't that great. And I know we don't have that much money to spend on education, but I really think that we can work with the colleges and get them into the school and vice versa, because education is the only way that the city's going to get better, in my opinion. And everything that I've learned after I've gone away to college to do that. Unfortunately, the city hasn't done much for me, which is devastating, especially doing more research on the history and knowing about what the African Americans did to make a community, and to even for me to be standing here, it's sad that it's not as common. But like I said, I really do want to participate more in the city and get involved with the council, get involved with the members in the community here, because as you can see, youth isn't even here, and there's going to be a time when you guys aren't going to be here, and then what? What are the plans for us to make this city better? Because it just looks like it's crumbling even further. So,
Glynis, if you don't mind, would you? That's me over here. If you don't mind, would you leave your contact information with Kathy?
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to say, I completed a graduate level thesis here about the history of Scranton, Black history specifically in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I really do want to give it to the city, because I think that there's a lot of gentlemen particularly, but also women that contributed to the city who have been completely lost and forgotten. So I will leave my information and my research available to everybody. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Gentlemen, please forgive me. I didn't realize that you had to sign in to speak. If it's okay, could I...
You just have to state your name and your residence.
Is it okay to give the recording secretary my what I'm going to say in my business card?
Sure. You can
Over
give it to
here?
Kathy, actually.
Here? Council members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me the time to speak. I'll try and be brief. I've come here tonight
Excuse
because
me, you have to state
Oh, I'm
your-
sorry.
state your
Michael Catanzaro from Childs, Lackawanna County. I've come here tonight because I've been reading that the City Council wants a full county reassessment. Since I cannot vote for or against any of the council members, I would like to relay to you a few facts about a reassessment and a couple of my personal thoughts. I've been coming to this city, worked in this city, and walked in this city since the 1970s. Scranton currently is less than 1/3 of the county population, which does make it a minority within the county. What is the purpose of a full county reassessment? The law states that any reassessment must be revenue neutral, so that in theory, it would not raise any additional revenues. Any reassessment would also be subject to something called the fairness principle, whereas no property can be assessed any higher than any property of similar type in the same area. Any increase in assessments will also increase the amount of school taxes a property owner pays. Since school taxes are based on the same assessed value, it thereby creates a double whammy for that property owner. The county government itself does not need any new tax revenues and is fine with the assessments as they are, as evidenced by their vote against a reassessment taken at their public meeting held up in Greenfield Township this past spring. Lackawanna County, lest anybody forgets, raised property taxes 90% between the years 2003 and 2013. If you build a new house, you are probably assessed at 2 to 4 times any other property in that neighborhood. So how does that make property taxes unfair? Also, if you purchase an existing property, you probably have a higher assessment than the previous owner. I know of a couple who built a house in Scranton, and between the city, the school district, and the county, they're paying $12,000 a year in property taxes. That's a lot of money for the privilege of living in the city. I know I couldn't afford to pay this. The county currently has a little over 1,100 properties on its repository for non-payment of taxes. Over 700 are in the city of Scranton. As I said, Scranton is 1/3 of the county population, yet it has 2/3 of the properties on this repository. I also do not believe that a lack of a current assessment curtails economic activity, since any large businesses that locate in the city or the county would get all sorts of tax abatements. Property values in the city of Scranton in particular are depressed precisely because of the high property taxes, school taxes, wage taxes, and mercantile taxes within the cities. Property values are also affected by whether a municipality or school district is run in a fiscally responsible manner. Have high taxes ever promoted economic activity? This city or any municipality or school district has every right to show up at an assessment hearing and argue against the reduction of the assessed property value. The cost of a full county reassessment is around $15 million, according to the county estimates. This is approximately 10% of the entire county budget and 20% of the property taxes the county collects. Where's this money coming from? This will only result in the county either raising taxes or borrow money in order to pay for a reassessment that must be revenue neutral by law. I believe this $15 million number is accurate because a gentleman who ran the assessor's office back in the 70s, when this was last seriously discussed, put the cost at that time at $5 million, so 5 to 15. In regards to the county, it does have a cash surplus, but this surplus must be maintained or they will lose their credit rating again and be paying $1.5 million a year to its creditors and penalties for the loss of that rating. Also, any reassessment will also clog an already overburdened county court system with assessment appeals, which will then add additional expenses to the county budget. The solution to the reassessment issue is to go to the state legislature and ask for a carve-out for Lackawanna County so that it could start to assess on the sales price of a property. Our legislature has previously, I got about another minute, okay? Our legislature has previously done carve-outs for municipalities and counties on taxing issues. This is already done in California and Florida and was adjudicated through the court system as both constitutional and fair. This would be the fairest way to gradually raise property assessments without punishing people who have bought their properties decades ago for less than $10,000 and have spent money, their own money, to maintain and improve these properties and probably have paid more in property taxes than they paid for their property. This would also eliminate the $15 million cost of a reassessment. Finally, is there anyone on council or anyone in this county that thinks they're not paying enough in taxes? There is nothing stopping them from sending extra money to the city or county treasuries. I seen an interview a few years ago with Warren Buffett, one of the most successful financial men and investors in this country. Mr. Buffett was touting increasing income and corporate taxes because he thought people in corporations should be paying more.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I got another paragraph if you'd let me finish.
I'm sorry.
Okay, fair enough.
We've been through it all night long. There's a 5-minute rule, and then we grant you another minute, and you've reached the point. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. A quick look back at history. Several years ago, a company came to this council looking to develop the Deeren Block. They also looked to have alerta before they would do anything here in the city. Person after person came to this lectern advising you against it. The council, in its wisdom, gave them the alerta. Part of the deal was that they would not raise the rent for the 10 years that they were on LERTA. City Council was approached by several people a year or two after they had built it and moved in. And they told City Council what was going on. And City Council, in its authority, told them, "We're sorry, there's nothing we can do, we don't have any power, and you'll just have to put up with it." I don't know what City Council can do now. They've already had the tax break for the 3 or 4 years that they've been there, plus they probably got a grant. But once again, City Council, in its wisdom, says there's nothing we can do, and you just chase a woman away from this lectern. Nice going.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident. Try to be lenient with that lady. She just lost her temper a little bit, but I could see her frustration. The bar and sidewalk in front of the Connell property. A few weeks ago, we had a discussion on street tables or sidewalk tables, and if you drive by there and look at that, if there were a lot of people seated there, you'd have to step into the gutter or walk out in the middle of the street. And I mean, their tables are so sprawled out. We need our sidewalks. That's all about smoking.
Dave, you're talking about Barpazzo?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's according to our regulations, and I know that I go by there all the time, and there's at least 4 feet between that and the curb, but maybe that night
I'll have to take
they pushed it out a
another
little
look
further.
at it. Before the bell rings, I'll try to get through stuff. The Act 76 was mentioned. I have a little reading here. What began as an effort by Kentucky to help a single company in Appalachia raise capital by keeping state income taxes withheld from workers' paychecks had grown to more than 2,700 companies in 19 states, Pennsylvania included, when this book was first published. The big banks, car makers, insurers, and a host of Canadian, Chinese, European, and Japanese companies all get the profit by pocketing taxes withheld from American workers' paychecks. Now, we have a budget in a state that's not filled. About 2 or 3 years ago, Joni brought in an article from Boston University, a study where possibly $1 billion every year is being shortchanged to the state from sales taxes from restaurants alone. So Act 76, maybe they're salivating at how much extra they can keep in their pockets. And by the way, a court ruling allowing industry and just about everybody else, instead of the small homeowner, to profit from this makes it obsolete. So we need a change in theory there. And you know, one of the things about self-righteousness and a lot of these theories on taxes, landlords pay property taxes and tenants pay income taxes towards the school. Now, not saying that that's insufficient, but it's always been pointed out like somebody's getting a free ride, and it's not necessarily the case. As much as what you have to pay is for the birds sometimes, but it hurts. A lot of times people say, well, I shouldn't pay taxes anymore because I don't have kids in school. Well, if that were the case, it would be tuition, and it would be considerably more expensive because there's hardly a school district in this part of the state that doesn't put in excess of $10,000 into each and every child's education. So we have to control the cost at the school district more so than the raise every year and a white shirt and tie and retirement at 55. I mean, for some of those jobs, it's got to fall by the wayside, and that's all there is to it. How you're going to do that? Gee, I don't know. And there's a lot of, once again, on unwarranted self-righteousness. We hear all kinds of theories on health insurance. Well, by the way, 49% of all maternities are paid for by Medicaid. So why should young people get a great big cut on their insurance because they're more apt to be healthier? Excuse me, but insurance is covering everybody for the same price, and we all take care of each other. That's what insurance is about, not determining who, you know, drunken driving is a choice you make. Buying a big fancy jewelry store on wheels is a choice you make. And still, you wind up paying anyway. I pay $900, I have a clean driving record, and I'll finish it quick. And all I have is liability. So if some joker with his jewelry store on wheels manages to finagle the accident my way, and it usually is their way. I'm still paying the $900 and nothing to show for it. Thank you, have a good night.
Marie Schumacher. I'd like to start with the agenda items. 5B, I don't know how you could get anybody to sign an emergency certificate because this is not an emergency. These are conditions that have been existing for years and years. I can tell you about how long the engine 10 has had light through the roof. They've made some. The only emergency I see is that you people are going on 5 weeks vacation and you want it done before September. I don't really call that an emergency. I call that poor planning. And on 7A, I really do not think you should be voting on this exit plan until you have informed us of your opinions on the initiatives that have been recommended by the PEL, and because if they are not met, and again, Mr. Evans is against at least one of them because he wants to change the revenues by cutting out the nuisance fees, which, you know, I don't oppose that, but I'm sure there are many other items in there that aren't going to happen. And I think each and every one of you on this council needs to tell us by each, I think I counted, there are 56 or 57 initiatives, whether you will support them or whether you will ignore them. There are some still missing from the last revised recovery plan that would have benefited the taxpayers and now have disappeared. But I'm against both of those being voted in tonight. With respect to for your 5-week vacation, how will we find out what is happening? Are you setting anything up so that, or will you reconvene if any of these court cases that are being kicked around either by visiting judges or just mechanisms to push the decisions downstream? But say the triple LST tax goes against the city, will you reconvene?
You're calling it a vacation. The only thing is we're not going to meet for 5 weeks. We're not quitting being councilman. I'm still going to be around. I still take calls. Our office is still open. To me, it's...
You're taking my time. You
asked a question and you want to get an answer. We're taking 5 meetings off. It's not a vacation. We're not all going to Switzerland or anything else. We all will be available.
So I still ask, how will we be informed? We're
Same
waiting.
way we do every meeting.
We're
Put a
waiting.
legal notice in the paper and we'll advertise the meeting if we have to have one. It's the standard procedure.
Will you have a meeting, yes or no, if it comes down that we get the court order on the double pension
If there's legislation
information?
required, yes, we will have a meeting. We will not have a meeting if there's no legislation.
So otherwise, we have to depend on the Times Tribune. Okay, thank you.
If there's legislation submitted to council and it's
I heard
necessary, we'll
you.
have the meeting. And
I
I don't
heard
know why you think it's not the right answer. That's the procedure.
Now, back on May 19th of 2016, you authorized the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a memorandum of understanding between the city of Scranton and the National Resource Network to assist in the city's economic recovery and to expend the sum of $18,375 pursuant to the terms and conditions of the memorandum of understanding. What has happened on this in this over a year? Is there any study? Has there a study been completed with recommendations?
Yeah, they're in the second phase of that right. Yeah, they're in the second phase of that right now. There'll be recommendations coming out.
What happened to the first phase?
Well, the first phase. I thought you didn't see anything from the first phase. There was a completed study in the first phase, but they are getting.
Where is there a copy in this council office?
I'll see if I can put my hands on that. Actually, I think I have something related to that.
And what does the second phase consist of then?
Well, a lot of it's, going into...
No, I don't know. I wouldn't be asking.
I'll talk to you privately about that, because, we don't want to waste your time at the podium.
Okay. Well, I think there are other people that would probably be interested, including the young lady who came to us tonight, and it's nice to see somebody under 30 here. And again, on the Sandone tire, did they ever pay for the replacement of any of the fire equipment that was lost? due to
No,
the
I
fire.
don't think the
at-
city ever billed them. The city didn't bill them, so they didn't pay them.
Should we not? Do we have a policy on whether or not
I
we
don't think the
bill?
fire department invoices anybody. I know that it's a policy that they haven't implemented.
What about the street sweeping schedule? Are they off schedule?
Are they off schedule? As far as I know, they're on schedule.
Couldn't tell it's, well, the only thing you could tell in my neighborhood is maybe if they were through, the pile that I had swept there then I guess that's how it got redistributed, but I'm not doing it a second time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. Perry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wexler. First, I just want to start off with our first speaker today. I was on the fence on how to address this. That's something that we never want to do. We have rules of council, and trust me, the rules of council are not for us. They're for our citizens, they're for every speaker. A meeting that's run more orderly and more organized is a better exchange of information for everybody involved. I'm sure we all feel for this lady's plight. We've discussed this, and there's been emails back and forth. I'm not going to speak for Mr. Menor, but I know Mr. Menor has exchanged emails several times. The allegations that this lady was stating are criminal. They're awful, but that's what they are. They're criminal, and that's the enforcement agency that would have to handle that. I don't envy what Mr. Wexler has to do on a week-by-week basis. It's a fine line of making sure everybody gets their point across, because everybody here is engaged. Anybody who's at this meeting is engaged. Anybody who's watching this meeting is engaged. And everybody has something important to them that they want to discuss. And it's Mr. Wexler's job to make sure that everybody gets their point across, at the same time making sure that everybody gets their point across and has a fair voice. And again, Mr. Wexler has a very difficult job, and I think he does it to the absolute best of his ability. Getting on with some business. In regards to a memo we sent to Chief Graziano about the speed detector on Pittston Avenue, we got a response back from him, and I thank him for that. The plan is still in place to have that moved to the Bernie Avenue location in the upcoming weeks. So I'm happy to hear that. Also, the police have been made aware and will be doing a study on the 1500 block of Muncie Avenue. If you remember, we brought up this, a petition was sent to our office last week about some through traffic that they were hoping to stop. So the police have that in hand, and they'll let us know of their findings when they have it. There's also the issue in West Side and some of the flooding issues. There has been, Director Gallagher has been in our office, and he just wanted to make us aware that he's been in contact with the American Water Company to team up and work with a more permanent solution to that drainage issue that just keeps getting blocked, which behind Mr. Schreiber's house. I don't have any other information on that. He just wanted to stop by our office and let us know that that is something that is still going through, and he's joining with, I believe it's Mr. Hall from American Water Company. We have some other business to finish up. Ms. Schumacher, you brought up the 400 block of clay last week. The answer to that is restitution will be sought by the city for any cleanup if somebody was directly convicted with that cleanup. So if they were convicted of actually trashing the place and just littering, then yes, that will be recouped. Anybody who's arrested up in that, for anybody who's unaware of the 400 block of clay, there was I guess they called it a mid-season party or midsummer party that got out of control. DPW had to clean up. There were some things that were going on. So anybody who was convicted of other crimes in that area, whether it was public drunkenness or anything else, we're going to ask the court to, in part of the sentencing program, to include community service to clean up some of the neighborhoods from that as well. And it would be my opinion that that community service be in and around the Hills section area, since that's where the crimes took place. And Mrs. Reed, as we discussed, if we can send a follow-up to the police department on the Rockwell Avenue Bridge opening and the traffic patterns that changed, and just making everybody aware of the parks in that neighborhood, and maybe we do need to do a slight speed reduction in that area. I'm not sure, but that's what the study will find. Ms. Honowanis, you brought up about the firehouses and, is there an ongoing maintenance program? Well, anybody who has any kind of large assets, I know even in my business, in the restaurant business, we have preventive maintenance programs that go on, and that's contracted out. They go out twice a year. They check off all their boxes. They make recommendations on what needs to be fixed, what's a priority, what could be held off 3 months, what could wait till next year. But then at least we get a plan in place and we can budget our money accordingly. Now, I don't know if we have something in place like that, but it should be if it's not. So that's something that I'm going to want to follow up with Mr. Balzoni in the next week. Just see, do we have a PM in place for some of our larger assets like the city building? It would definitely be beneficial. A penny saved is a penny earned. What else do we have? My paper got filled up quick tonight, guys. I'm sorry. So we have the speaker. I just want to address you. You brought up some things about the downtown and some of the things that we're doing here. Well, the first thing, one of the ideas of the economic development was the growth of businesses. So we wanted to become a business-friendly city for 2 reasons. Businesses drive traffic to our city, which then feed off other businesses, and that creates growth, or at least that's our plan. And secondly, businesses create jobs. If you were to ask me, one of the single biggest issues facing the city of Scranton is that there aren't enough good-paying jobs to keep people grounded. Now, there are jobs here, but me personally, in my field in restaurant, I've had many different jobs, and I've been in for decades, and not one of them was ever in the city of Scranton. I worked in Dixon City a lot. I worked in Wilkes-Barre a lot. Right now, I'm out of Hazleton, but there just wasn't any time where that was there, and it's unfortunate. I would love to work in the city that I live in, but it just hasn't happened for me. And so I could see, how that could evolve into other areas, that there's just not enough good-paying jobs. So that's the biggest issue we have. To get to your point about millennials, what I would recommend, and I highly recommend for all millennials, and this goes for Generation Xers, Yers, all baby boomers now looking to maybe retire, to get into a new field, is get into school and stay in school. Schooling isn't a 12-year program that ends. You should go on, and not only do you take your education seriously, but value it. Always keep learning, always take that next step, because you never know what door is going to close on you and what door education can open for you in the future. And the next request and a piece of advice I would have for the generation coming up is get involved with whatever you're passionate about, whether it's coaching or umpiring Little League, whether it's joining a neighborhood group, helping out with your church. There's many ways, and that builds community. I know you've used that word a couple times at the podium, was community, and that's how we build a community, by all getting involved in our own little piece. Just whatever it is, even if it's just umpiring the bases for one summer at the Little League game, just get out there, get part of your community, and build that community. Are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. Do we have a plan in place to get to where we want to be? We hope so. But in any side, in any government, it's always a fluid environment. Plans change, we have to adapt, and we're doing the best we could. But it was great seeing you here today, and I hope you come back to see us again. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Mr. Rogan?
Yes, a couple comments, primarily on items that were brought up from the podium tonight. Mrs. Reed, could we please send a request to DPW Director Gallagher asking for copies of the DPW garbage and recycling routes, as well as asking how those routes were formulated and when they were formed. I definitely think and I'm glad it was brought up as a reminder. It's something that definitely needs to be overhauled, and over time, as the city changes and population shifts, it's something that needs to be looked at a few times. And I'm sure we're not as efficient as many private businesses, but I know companies such as UPS and FedEx, while they're in a completely different business than collecting garbage, they have a large fleet of trucks driving through neighborhoods on routes that are planned out very meticulously, and it's all done by computers. There's no reason why we can't do something similar in the city. Next, comment was made about reassessment tonight from speaker, and although I disagreed with some of what was brought up, I actually do agree with the solution. I do wish we, in the state of Pennsylvania, we had assessments done at the point of sale. We do not. And one item that was mentioned that was incorrect is if you purchase a home, your assessment does not change. The only way your assessment can change currently is if you put a physical addition on your home or if you appeal your assessment. They're the only two ways. Transferring of property does not change the tax assessment under the current system. So I just wanted to correct that item as well. Next, regarding the firehouses, we did have a caucus with Dave Bolzoni. We spoke a little bit about the condition of the firehouses, and when I talked to the guys at our fire department, the biggest complaint that I hear is about the condition of the firehouses. And I did ask Mr. Bolzoni in the caucus when the last time meaningful work was done on these firehouses, and his first answer was probably around the time he was born, and the second answer was around the time I was born. So 1986, which was prior to me being born, was when they did the last repairs on some of these properties, and prior to that was in the 60s. So you've had a number of firehouses in the city that really have been built and left to deteriorate. Think of your own home. If you didn't do any basic maintenance for 30 years, the cost. And we have to look after these repairs are done, because it is a large sum of money that's being spent to do these repairs, and they need to be done for the public safety and for the safety of the guys that are working in our fire department. But once these repairs are done, they need to be maintained the same way an individual would maintain their home. Like I said, it's a large expenditure, and we need to make sure we're protecting that investment. But anyone who's been to any of the firehouses or talked to anyone on the department knows that this should have been done 10, 15, 20 years ago. Again, it was because of economic issues, why it's been deferred, and you get to the point where instead of doing a repair, you're doing a complete redo. All these roofs, I think it was 7 out of 8 roofs, need to be completely replaced. That's a very large expenditure. Again, comparing it for a regular individual, if the roof on your house goes, that's a very expensive proposition, and it's very stressful, that amount of cost. Multiply that times 7 properties, and then they're obviously much larger than single-family homes, so you could imagine the cost. So we do have to make sure that we keep up on the maintenance, and as Mr. Perry mentioned, it's definitely something that we need to make sure that not only the current mayor, but any future mayors and future councils as well need to hold their feet to the fire and budget for ongoing maintenance. They say a stitch in time saves 9, and it's true. And it's something that we really need to make sure we apply to. And finally, it's nice to see a couple new speakers here today. I forget your name, but you mentioned about younger people in the city. And you may not know this because we've been up here a while, but myself and Mr. Gahn are technically millennials. I actually looked it up. I was born in 1987. So we, there are a lot of younger people in the city that are involved. And one of the biggest frustrations, I still consider myself younger, I hope I am, of being younger in the city of Scranton is the brain drain, which young people go through our school system, then they go off to college and they never come back. Or they may go to college here and then move away for a job and never come back. And two of the biggest problems with that, one Mr. Perry hit on already, is the lack of good family-sustaining jobs within the area. And that's something that is, it's not just here in Scranton. That's something that's happening all throughout the Rust Belt. So that's one major issue. But we do have a lot of positive things that have been happening in the community for younger people as well. And, just going through the downtown on a weekend, you could see a lot of the different festivals that are going on, art festivals, all types of different events, which are nice, but we do have to have that go out into the neighborhoods as well, not just in the downtown. So that is all for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogan. Mr. Evans?
Thank you. First, a little business. I'd like to make a motion to send correspondence to Senator John P. Blake requesting that he review legislation which would enable Scranton to have the option to follow the state real estate tax laws, thereby allowing the city to have the opportunity under the municipal claim process and to streamline the tax sale process for the city of Scranton.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second on the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, so moved.
Okay, thank you. I was glad to see the gentleman come and discuss reassessment. I wish he was still here because I actually would say to him I disagree with 95% of what he said. Specifically, the $15 million price tag. As a former director of the assessment office and being involved with the reassessment the last time it was in Scranton, I believe, in my opinion, the real number is closer to 7.5 million, probably half of that. Because a lot of the data was already accumulated. Every single property in Lackawanna County was inventoried, every single one. So that's a pretty big head start. It has to be updated. It's 9 or 10 years old, but a lot of that information is already done. So these inflated numbers on reassessment sort of get in my craw a little bit. And to the young lady that spoke as well, hopefully when we get your contact information, we're going to talk a little bit more because I'm very involved in the downtown. I live downtown. And I think one thing you're right about is the downtown needs to be more of a community, and I think that's what's evolving. What you're seeing now with the millennials, young professionals, and empty nesters moving downtown, as well as all the other people that are already here, senior citizens, et cetera. You're starting to create a neighborhood that wasn't here before. And I think it's important to harness that energy and that process and use it to our advantage, because I think ultimately the downtown is going to be, in my opinion, the answer to a lot of what we need to do to move forward. So that's very, very important. So on a couple other issues, where you asked about NRN, the first part of the NRN process, that plan, I'll try to get that for you. The second part really is the evolution of Scranton tomorrow, how Scranton tomorrow is going to evolve their organization. That's a lot of what's going on in the NRN process right now, because they were designated in the first one to be the organization that will lead the downtown charge, but there's a lot of changes that have to be made in order for that to happen. A little while ago, I asked LIPS to do a study on 17 fees that I identified that may be eliminated or consolidated, totaling approximately $71,000. So I'd like to send another letter to Deputy Director Oleski, who I understand has been tasked with this, for a status report. And I also would like to request that LIPS give me a report on the fees currently being charged by their department, which are required by state or federal law. And if they are required, please provide the statute that mandates that fee. Because if I don't get the information by budget time, I'm going to start eliminating fees, or at least make a motion to eliminate fees in the budget. So I want to make sure that if they're required by the state or federal government, we don't do that. But if they don't, and they're not, then they're up for grabs. Because we have to do everything we can to start sending the message to the public that we are finally getting it, that we're going to be business friendly. And these nuisance taxes and fees are absolutely ridiculous. On the rental registration, I visited the county assessment office yesterday with James Morand, who has been hired to assist with the rental registration program, and Nancy Craig from the BA's office. We're there to review the documents of field work that were done in conjunction with the 2007 reassessment. We all felt that the information we found, and we found the boxes, approximately 11 boxes are full of information based on Scranton properties. We think there's value there. We think there's information there that we don't have. So we're going to explore that more, and I think it's going to be a very positive as the rental registration process moves forward. So I'd like to thank Andy Wallace, who's the County Chief of Staff, for helping coordinating that meeting and that review, as well as John Foley, who was the Deputy Director of the Assessment Office, for all this help and cooperation, and continued cooperation, which we expect as we move forward. And I'll keep everybody informed as that project moves forward as well. I attended a Housing Appeals Board meeting on Monday at the request of several neighbors who were attending because of a nuisance property in their neighborhood that was slated for demolition. It went well for them, and that was great. I just wanted to comment on the meeting. I thought it was well run. I thought the members of the board, all from related fields involved in construction or architecture, were professional, acted professionally, and in my opinion made sound decisions and sound recommendations that night. So that's my 2 cents on the Housing Appeals Board. On the exit plan, my general feeling is if the administration sends legislation down that I feel is consistent with the recovery plan, I'll support it. If they send legislation that's inconsistent with the recovery plan, I will not. I know Marie mentioned the fees sort of not being consistent with it, but we're talking about $71,000, and I think that the good far outweighs the bad in that scenario, again, to be more business-friendly. But I've said many times before, beyond the plan, there must be dramatic systemic changes in the day-to-day operations of city government if we are going to thrive post-Act 47. And if we don't recognize that, we're going to fail. So big, dramatic changes have to be made. And finally, I want to acknowledge the passing of Herb Nealon. Herb was the father of former Councilwoman Sherry Nealon Williams. I had the pleasure of knowing Herb and his wife Isabel for many, many years. I was never in his company that he didn't make me smile, and everyone else in the room. He was a good soul with a big heart. Herb Nealon will be missed by many, and my deepest, deepest condolences to the Nealon family. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Gahan?
Yes, thank you. A few items. First, a few citizens' requests from the past week. There have been major issues. I've been getting a lot of emails about a food truck on Pittston Avenue and Elm Street that residents are upset about. They think that the food truck is operating illegally. So the city inspectors are working on that along with the chief of police. The 300 block of Foster Street, which is, there's a foreclosed home. Neighbors are having serious issues with bushes around the house, which is impeding traffic to and from the farmer's market. So we'll send that again to licensing and inspection. I received several complaints about Little Orem Street, which is off Main Avenue and it intersects with Powderly Court. Mrs. Reed, I'd like to please request that this be put on the paving list, the next paving list. Residents tell me that this street has not been paved in 41 years and it's in terrible condition. We received a request from a gentleman living in the 1500 block of Muncie Avenue about issues with truck traffic. I was able to speak with this gentleman on the phone this week, and we did send something to the city engineer and to the Department of Public Works, so we'll keep him updated on that. Received several complaints about a property in the 1300 block of Forest Street. Again, bushes blocking visibility up the hill at the intersection of Forest Street coming from Main Avenue, and the whole property is extremely overgrown. So we need to ask licensing and inspections if this property is part of the foreclosure registry program. I would like in September, I know I've made this request before, but I hope that we can set up a caucus with ABM and NDC for a progress update on the parking garages. It's been, I believe a year and a half now, so I think we need an update on that. Also, we're still working on rules of the park signage for Robinson Park and other parks throughout the city. Still not sure if we need legislation to do this, but we are working to get that completed, and hopefully we'll have that ready to go in September. Regarding the hiring of Mr. Abrahamson as special counsel to the city, I would like to request that a letter be sent to Roseanne Novembrino, the city controller, asking her for her opinion on whether or not that position should have been bid out. She did say in a July 6th Scranton Times article that she was going to look into the issue, so I would like that in writing if possible. Over the past few weeks, there have been several comments, concerns, and questions brought up about the dissolution of the Scranton Sewer Authority, an ordinance that this council voted on back in December of 2016. Myself and Councilman Wexler voted against it for several reasons. Over the past few months, there have continually been questions about whether or not the Scranton Sewer Authority should in fact exist. We also just voted on using $19 million from the sale of the sewer authority, from the proceeds, to pay down debt. I voted against that because my fear is that we may have to pay that back at some point. My other fear is that this whole thing was not done properly. And I think legitimate questions have been brought up by the public, by the newspaper, and by myself over the past few weeks. I asked Solicitor Minora to look into the issue, to review the effect that a Pennsylvania state statute, 53 PA CSA 5612, would have on the distribution of funds to the city following the asset sale to Pennsylvania American Water by the Scranton Sewer Authority. I'm not going to read through the whole memo issued by Mr. Menorah, but there were several things that he said that I would like to take note of. In the memo, Mr. Menorah says that it should be noted here that the remaining Scranton Sewer Authority function, that is, completing the eminent domain actions, could have been taken in-house by the city and still can be at any time. I think it would have been a cleaner way to transfer the funds of the sale to the city if the Scranton Sewer Authority had been terminated. My reasoning for this is the conflict between 53 PA CSA 5607D and Statute 5612. I would like to send a letter to the mayor asking the following. Why hasn't the mayor filed the termination certificate that was passed by this council back in December of 2016 with the Office of the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? And shouldn't the city have assumed the easement issues and taken it in-house as Mr. Menorah had suggested? I look back on the ordinance that was passed in December of 2016 dissolving or giving the city the right to dissolve the authority, and I look at a few sections that are a cause for concern. Section 1 says the city approves the termination certificate submitted by the sewer authority to terminate its existence following the satisfaction and discharge of all Scranton Sewer Authority bonds by the Scranton Sewer Authority. Section 2, the city hereby agrees to assume liability for all claims outstanding against the Scranton Sewer Authority following the discharge of all Scranton Sewer Authority bonds and all other Scranton Sewer Authority indebtedness, which I believe that has all taken place. And finally, Section 3, council hereby authorizes the mayor and other appropriate city officials to file a copy of the approved termination certificate with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and upon receipt of the approved termination certificate from the Secretary of the Commonwealth, authorizes that it be filed in the office of the Recorder of Deeds of Lackawanna County. So my basic question is, why hasn't this been done yet? Now, I think many of these questions probably will be answered in the court case that's ongoing because these questions have been raised. But I would like to know why the termination certificate was not sent to the Office of Secretary of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania by the mayor when this occurred. Because I think that all of us were under the assumption, or at least I was under the assumption at that time, even though I voted against this for other reasons, that once this council passed this legislation, that the sewer authority board and the sewer authority as it used to exist would have in fact been terminated. And that is all I have for this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gahan. I do want to make a brief comment about the events of this evening. That is something that I never, ever, ever wanted to do as a councilman, especially as council president. The question of whether we can take insults and abuse is not a question. We take it every week. All we ask is that people really keep their comments to a 5-minute rule. It's courtesy. All we ask is that you can pretty much say whatever you care to say here. We don't really restrict comment at all. The person who spoke tonight on reassessment is not from the city of Scranton. Technically, we probably could have not let him speak, but we all are concerned about assessment and we want to hear people's opinions on it. And that'll probably happen more as we move towards the referendum. But I don't think that it's proper for someone to just disregard the rules of council. The rules of council have been established. They've been voted on. They've been rules of council that were not changed by this council. They've been established for years. And I just think it's common courtesy to follow the rules. That's what I was taught as a child. Follow the rules. I don't know why someone would think that the rules don't apply to them. That's a part of the problem with America today, is people think rules don't apply to them. It's a 5-minute speaking rule. We give you a courtesy of an extra minute to finish your thought. All we ask is that you follow that rule. I didn't have any disagreement with what the speaker was saying. We've been trying to work on this problem for a couple of years. This particular person, as was said, just does not like the answers that we're providing her. She probably has legitimate concerns. If it is abuse of the elderly, then take that claim to the Department of Aging. Take that claim to Lackawanna County Department of Aging. City Council is not the catch-all or the do-all for everyone's problems here. We are a focal point for people to come and get their problems out there. Of course we are. That's what we're here for. All councilmen here we take everybody's concern that comes to that podium, and we try to work them as best we can. This person just does not like the answers that we are being provided. I'll be honest with you, I'm embarrassed that I had to call the Scranton Police Department to come here this evening. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for myself that I could not get someone to understand the rules. It's a basic fact, and like I said, I was taught, my parents taught me to be a rule follower, and that's what I am. For the majority of people that come to council, they follow the rules. 5 minutes is a long time to speak, and if you're going to make a prepared statement, rehearse it at home and time yourself. That's all you have to do. We do not regulate comment here for the most part. I'm unfortunate. I apologize. I apologize to the citizens of Scranton that I had to call a recess in a meeting and have someone stop their comment. It's just something that they should be prepared to come and speak for 5 minutes and be done. And once again, I apologize to the citizens of Scranton that I had to do that. In terms of comments made about council's vacation, number one, it's not a vacation. The office is open. We're still taking calls. We're still attending meetings. We're still doing all the things that council people do. If people think council is only a Thursday night meeting from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., they are 100% wrong. Every night we do something for the city. Every night we're either at a meeting, taking calls. I work a full-time job like everyone else does. The first thing I do when I get home is open up my email, check my emails, check my email on my personal account, check my email on my city account. And we respond to those emails, plus taking calls. It's same with everyone here. It's not just me, or it's not Mr. Gaughan, it's not anybody else. We're constantly being approached for help, and we really do try to help as best we can with every situation. So I find it irresponsible to say that we're not going to be here, and I really find it to not make any sense that the process is if legislation comes down, we'll have the meeting, and we'll always have the meeting. And if someone's on vacation, if we have 3 councilmen, we'll have the meeting. But I'd like the citizens of Scranton to know that we still are serving the public, even though per se on vacation. We're just not here on Thursday night, and everybody will have to find something else to do for a little while. In terms of Mr. Gaughan's questions about the parking, I believe that there's going to be a general meeting of the Parking Authority attended by ABM while we're on break. But if that does not happen, we will have them come in September. And I was happy to see that they made progress on the elevators, because that's a huge problem for the people that live in the city. And in terms of the comments made by Ms. Johns, I'm glad that you came here. We're here every Thursday except for the next 5 weeks, and we'll be back in September. But I will give you a call while we're off, just to speak to you and see what kind of things you're interested in, and maybe we can put you in the right direction to go in a neighborhood group or in a community group like Scranton Tomorrow. Or there's a lot of organizations that would be anxious to have someone, with your intelligence to become a part of that. And we're always looking for new faces. And there are certain segments of our community that are underserved. And we talked about this. I ran for office a couple of times and I've lost once too many times. But the important thing is people get involved. And I tell people, and I've spoke to your community a lot of times and said, you have to come out as a force. You have to have a group of people who have some power. That's where you have power. And maybe you're the leader that gets that group together, and that would be awesome. So thank you for coming this evening. Just one of the things that we've been hearing about is a problem up on Route 307 by Seymour Avenue. We had a citizen send us some questions about that, and Director Gallagher has spoken with that person. I guess 307 is going to be repaved in the next couple weeks, and as part of that repair, they are going to be responsible for fixing the drainage part of all the drainage on East Mountain. So this is something that the city is aware of. I will contact I'm not sure his involvement in it, but our pave cut inspector, what involvement he has with the state project, I'm not sure. But we will stay on top of this because it is a dangerous situation. And that's all I have at this time.
5B, for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Marpol Company Incorporated for general trades services for the City of Scranton Fire Department Facility Improvement Project for licensed general and prime contractors. Emergency certificate attached.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
Yes, on the question. I'm not opposed to this project. I understand from being in the caucus and talking with Mr. Bolzoni and one of the contractors that is going to do work, that there are maintenance needs that need to be completed on some of the firehouses throughout the city. My no vote tonight is going to be a procedural one. As a rule of thumb, I believe that council should have, when a resolution comes before us, 2 weeks to review that legislation. I don't feel that I had enough time to review all of the backup material. I appreciate Mr. Bolzoni and Mr. Morrison-Kevich coming into the caucus, but I don't think that there exists a major emergency here. Maybe an inconvenience, but not an emergency that would allow a certificate to be attached. So from a procedural standpoint, as a rule of thumb, I would prefer the 2 weeks to review, be able to review legislation, be able to ask questions and things of that nature. So again, from a procedural standpoint, I will be voting no to move this along in one night. Thank you.
Yes, on the question, I take a little bit of a different outlook than Mr. Gahan does. I would rather be in charge of an emergency that I know when I can declare the emergency, as in this case. I'm very familiar with the problems that are at Engine 10 and all the other fire stations in the city. I think an emergency that would be decided by an outside source would be perhaps the roof collapses or the roof gets a hole in it and we have to shut down a fire station. So I'm happy to approve an emergency that I know is happening than one that I can't see out into the future.
Yeah, on the question, and I think what was important tonight was that Mr. Bolzoni came. If he didn't come, I think I would have probably voted no on this, because I think when we have to do this, and we have emergency certificate, it's very, very important that the administration has somebody come and explain their position and why we're doing it this way.
I already mentioned why I support the project, but we talk a lot about emergency certificates. I do want to read for the public what the emergency certificate states, and just to inform the public how this would work. So it's an emergency certificate. It says, this is to certify that an emergency exists requiring the immediate passage of the attached ordinance, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to enter into a contract with Mar-Paul Co. for general trade services for the City of Scranton Fire Department Facility Improvement Project for licensed general and prime contractors. This contract includes roof replacement and restoration work. The request for the approval by City Council prior to the August recess is made because of the timeliness needed to complete the roofing component of the project, which is part of the comprehensive bid package received. And it is signed by the mayor and by the city controller. And in order for City Council to pass any type of legislation in one night, such as in this situation, that emergency certificate I just read has to be signed by both the mayor and the city controller. So I know we mention emergency certificates every now and again, but just to explain it so the public understands what it actually is.
Yes, on the question, we have, as we all know, many needs in our firehouses, and the utmost is the roof. Without the roof, you don't have anything. You don't have the building, you don't have anything. And so we need to get these done yesterday. That's when they needed to be fixed. The bid process took place. There was a winner awarded. The contract got signed. Everything got finalized. It wasn't ready to go for us last week. It's ready to go for us this week. Our options are A, wait till September to go through this legislation, which would be a 2-week process. Then another 2 weeks to get the assessment done, and then we're talking about October work being done on 6 roofs, which you could run into any type of, anybody who has a construction background knows that once you start doing roofs in October, you might be able to get one done, but you have to get them all done before winter. Or option B is what this emergency certificate represents, getting this done and put in front of us today with the certificate attached, so that this work can get started as soon as possible, which now we're talking about at end of August, or actually middle of August, when work can begin. So it's just, the loss of property with having these firehouses go through another winter, to me, it's just too great. I would like to get these all done before winter, and this would be the best way possible. Could have been done otherwise, maybe, but then we're counting on circumstances out of control as far as weather goes. So I'll be voting yes for this.
All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it, so moved.
I make a motion to suspend the rules to move item 5B to seventh order to be considered for final passage based on the attached emergency certificate.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it, so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, no business at this time. Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, file of the Council number 111, 2017, adopting and implementing the Act 47 exit plan for the City of Scranton pursuant to the Financially Distressed Municipalities Act, and authorizing the mayor of the City of Scranton to issue an order directing the implementation of the Act 47 exit plan, which will become effective upon adoption, attached hereto as Exhibit A, in accordance with the provisions of 53 PA CSA Section 11701.245, the Municipalities Financial Recovery Act.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question,
Yes, on the question. Reading through the three-year exit plan, we've had quite a long amount of time to take a look at it, and I have several comments and concerns. Number one, which I've stated here before, and this is included in the three-year exit plan, is the amount of money that is going to be put aside for stormwater management. I've objected to this before. The plan calls for $500,000 to be put aside. I think the city administration is seriously underselling stormwater management. I think more money needed to be put aside for that cost, which at this point we don't know because the study has not been completed yet. So that's one concern. My second concern, and I mentioned this at the public hearing that took place with the Pennsylvania Economy League, is on chapter 9, page 7. And this is where the plan calls for, the three-year exit plan calls for the allocation of administrative responsibilities. And I'd just like to read a section of this recommendation. It says that the fundamental objective of the operation of the Office of Business Administration should remain the administration of the yearly budget and completion of the audit on a timely basis. The Business Administrator's Office presently assumes responsibility for departmental initiatives outside of its administrative code responsibilities. To achieve the identified financial management objectives, the various city departments will assume greater responsibility for direct department initiatives such as request for proposal preparation and execution to the greatest extent as allowed under the Home Rule Charter and Administrative Code. Now, I mentioned this at the public hearing. This recommendation in and of itself is very concerning to me. If we look at this plan from the standpoint of the operation of City Hall over the past 3.5 years, the fact that there had to be a recommendation in the three-year exit plan that department heads should do their job is extremely concerning. That the business administrator has taken on all of this responsibility, that he presently assumes responsibility for departmental initiatives outside of its administrative code responsibilities. I don't get it. I mentioned this a few weeks ago and I still don't understand it. Again, the fact that that has to be a recommendation tells me one of two things. There is either he hired the wrong people as department heads, number one, and number two, there's no leadership. So you had to have Pell tell the mayor that he has to have his department heads perform their duties. I don't get it. So that's one concern. Second concern, and I brought this up before, is with the arbitration issue that's currently going to be decided soon, from what I understand, over the retiree age, a discrepancy in the code. And I'll read from the three-year exit plan in a second. But basically, this may cripple the pension system even further than it already is. The city is challenging an interpretation of adopted city ordinances that govern the required age for retirement plan participants. There are inconsistent provisions for the age of retirement eligibility for the police and firefighter pension plans. These inconsistencies are the subject of legal action by I believe by the police and fire department union, seeking to remove a stated retirement age and allow retirement solely upon years of service. The elimination of an age requirement will allow for a large number of retirees in the near future. Such an increase is not factored in to the current actuarial assumptions, valuations, and annual funding requirements, and may result in a large increase in the city's annual required obligation, which it can ill afford. Again, this in of itself is extremely concerning. We're talking about putting millions of dollars into a pension system when currently there is a case before an arbiter of whether or not they're going to remove the retirement age requirement. So in the future, we could have this 3-year exit plan. If they win in arbitration, we could be looking down the pike at a large number of retirees, and we're right back where we started. So again, extremely concerning. Another thing that popped out to me, and I've spoken about this for the last 3.5 years, is when you look at the numbers in this 3-year exit plan, 75% of city expenditures are employee compensation and benefits. Over the 3-year exit plan, this number fluctuates, but not a lot. We are still around, in 2020, about 75% of our expenditures for employee compensation and benefits. I don't know how this is sustainable. I've been talking about this now for 3.5 years. And I'll read from the 3-year exit plan. It says, the bottom line is the restoration of the city's fiscal health cannot be achieved without controlling its future personnel expenditures, workers' compensation, and pension benefits. Personnel expenditures for active employees and retirees represent the majority of the city's general fund operating expenses and rise annually during the review period. The level of cash compensation and benefits is offered within the context of the city's weak tax base. The city cannot adequately address its structural operating deficits without diligently managing the entire employee compensation package it offers its employees so that the growth in employee compensation and employee benefits more closely tracks the city's revenue growth. And I'll say it once again, I think one of the major mistakes that has been made over the last 3.5 years was in 2015 with the renegotiated police and fire contracts. I don't know that we may have made some progress, but I don't know that we went far enough there in regards to expenditures and how much money we're actually going to save. Another concern of mine is Chapter 6, page 2. The coordinator recommends that the city engage in discussions with its collective bargaining units to enter into a pension benefit memorandum of understanding. This memorandum should control the timing and limit the amount of any pension benefit enhancements for at least 10 years beginning in 2017. Moreover, any disputes between the bargaining units in the city that could have a material adverse impact on the funding of the pension plans as estimated or calculated by the actuary to the plans should be adjudicated or resolved prior to any significant contributions being made from sewer sale proceeds to the pension funds. My concern here, and I don't know if it was possible, is that maybe this should have already been accomplished when the police and fire contracts were being renegotiated, or this at least should have been brought up, that there should have been a pension benefit memorandum of understanding. I don't know if it's going to be possible to do that in the future, but I think it might be difficult. My last concern is Chapter 7, page 2. As it was brought up tonight, the National Resource Network is developing a strategic plan that focuses on revitalizing the city's downtown. One of the recommendations within that plan, and as mentioned in the 3-year exit plan, is for the city of Scranton to increase its capacity for economic development by designating a current or new staff member to be the city's point person for implementation of the downtown plan. Mayor Courtwright designated the business administrator, Dave Bolzoni, temporarily as the city's point person to be assisted by the deputy director of OECD. The plan says that Mayor Courtright has indicated a willingness to designate a permanent economic development point person, but currently no one in the administration can assume those duties full-time. Absent a full-time city economic development point person, it is anticipated that the partnership with Scranton Tomorrow will bolster the city's internal economic development capacity. I have several concerns based on what was indicated in the plan. First of all, I think, based on what's already occurred, the city is not following one of the previous recommendations that I mentioned about allocation of administrative responsibilities. Again, in the recommendation it says to take away responsibility from what other people in City Hall should be doing away from the business administrator. Well, we're designating Mr. Bolzoni as the temporary point person for this project. Again, does not make sense. We have an Office of Economic and Community Development. Why is the director of OECD not heading up or being the point person for this whole project? That's something that I don't understand. It also says here within the exit plan that challenges remain to implementing economic development initiatives, such as the continued lack of capacity in terms of a designated economic development point person in city government other than the city business administrator. So I would like to know, and maybe we can send a letter, why the director of OECD is not the point person. I would assume that that would be the duties of the department head. And that's why the position is there. And I would think that the job in its very nature is supposed to be a point person for these type of projects. The other concern here, and I'll be very brief on this one, is I understand wanting to continue to develop the downtown, to allocate resources there, but I do think based on what I read in the three-year exit plan and what I've read so far from the National Resource Network, we're not doing enough to focus on the neighborhoods. The downtown is developing, there is a residential community, but I think we need to put more of a focus. The Office of Economic and Community Development needs to put much more of a focus on our neighborhoods. There needs to be more of a concerted effort there. And that is all I have. Thank you.
On the question, just to get back to some history, and I don't disagree with, Councilman Gaughan's concerns. They're all very real concerns, but the decision to exit is made by PEL, not the city of Scranton. They determine if we're exiting. If we don't, there's three options you can make. Disincorporation of the municipality, and we don't meet the criteria for disincorporation. Existence of fiscal emergency, we don't meet the definition for fiscal emergency. So the only option we had was to exit. Now you can agree with some of the things in the exit plan, and that's certainly appropriate, but that at this point is our only choice because we don't have the say. Here's our plan, we can either vote it up or down, but PEL determines if the city exits Act 47. That's all I have.
Yes, in regards to a few of the comments that Mr. Gaughan made, I voted for the police and fire contracts. The reason why I voted for them was, number one, it gave us a quiet contract period while we were undergoing our efforts to be in recovery. It did result in some modifications to the police contract and the fire contract that are having positive results. The amount of compensation claims that were taking place earlier are greatly reduced. The increased contributions that both the fire and police are making a difference in our pension. I believe when this council and the administration came in, the fund balance of the pension was around $39 million. And right now today it sits at $58 million. That's because of increased contributions, better management of the plan, and more of a focus on making sure that it performs well. So I am concerned, with, as Mr. Gaughan is, with the state of the lawsuit. But in terms of voting for that contract and providing us labor peace for these few years, I think we're most important to make sure we can get out of our distressed status. And just, I'm not sure in regards to Mrs. Abley, who's the OECD director, she is paid with federal funds, so I'm not sure if she's allowed to do other economic development work that don't include non-federal money. That I'm not sure on, but and taking a different approach on this. I come from private industry where you give people responsibility that can get things done. Mr. Balzoni has proven that he is a responsible person, and he's able to manage the business office as well contribute to other projects. If it wasn't for Mr. Balzoni, he's our main point of contact for information for council, mostly on every project. And I agree with Mr. Gahan, other managers should be stepping up, but at this time right now, the only guy stepping up to get this work done is Dave Balzoni. And I count on him, and he's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm happy whenever I see a project that Dave is taking the lead on. I'm very happy to see that. I have to remember where I was. On the question we did, roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B for consideration by the Committee on Public Works for adoption, Resolution Number 178, 2017, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into the Sixth Amendment to the Federal Aid Bridge Project Agreement number as noted between the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the City of Scranton for the purpose of increasing construction funding and updating standard federal provisions of the Rockwell Avenue Bridge Project.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Works?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Works, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 179, 2017, amending Resolution Number 133, 2017, entitled Authorizing the Mayor and Other Appropriate City Officials to Execute and Enter into a Contract with PMA Management Corporation for City of Scranton Self-Insured Workers' Compensation and Heart and Lung Claims Third-Party Administration for a period of 3 years from April 1, 2017 through March 31, 2020, to include Exhibit C to the contract.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
Yes.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted. If anyone would like to address council on the emergency legislation, you may do so at this time.
D, formerly 5B, for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, Resolution Number 180, 2017, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a contract with Mar Paul Company Incorporated for general trades services for the City of Scranton Fire Department Facility Improvement Project for licensed general and prime contractors. Emergency certificate attached.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety?
As chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Rogan?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Gahn?
No.
Mr. Wexler?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned.